And Game 3 is here. 2,000 Atmospheres is going to be the final battleground between these two Korean Terrans. In the top right, repping Psystorm, we have GuMiho. In the bottom left, it is Byun for Shopify Rebellion. Shopify Rebellion being just kind of still a new team into the esports world, but had fantastic lineup as soon as they were announced, and they even added Hearthstone to their roster very recently, which is just I mean, it's a perfect pickup for a lot of reasons. I'm actually surprised that other teams weren't clamoring a little bit. Not necessarily because of Hearthstone as a pro gamer, because let's be honest, I don't know how much teams care about StarCraft 2 pro gamers and their results. I'm sure some, but just, I don't know if it's a lot. But rather just because he brings so much else. I mean, you slap Shopify Rebellion Hearthstone on any of his YouTube videos and you get, well, to be honest, a lot more people actually seeing that logo, seeing the Shopify support. Teams can be very interesting, though. I mean, I'm talking about do teams care about X, Y, or Z, and all that's truth is I don't know. So many teams in esports, even some of the really big esports, the really big teams are entirely passion-driven. If they're not passion-driven, they're basically big investments, right? They know they won't make a return, but they're kind of hoping that they will eventually. And then, you know, as far as, well, how do they make a return? Yeah, sponsors, okay, fine, but then apparently there is a lot to be said about the clout, I guess, the respect that they earn. I don't know much about this whole element, I guess, of teams and sports in general. But TLO of Shopify Rebellion did go on the Pylon show a couple of months ago and talked about this. So it was interesting that, you know, people saying, I love Shopify, I love Psystorm, what have you, actually matters to them a lot. Just a little spiel, I suppose, to try and maybe encourage people to give the love to the teams and to sponsors and all get, you know, good stuff. But yeah, Shopify Rebellion might be new, might come with a powerhouse brand. Psystorm, kind of the opposite, does not have a big name sponsor, and it has been around for a very long time. I don't think the entirety of StarCraft 2, but we're getting close to the point where it doesn't matter, you know? If they came in 2011, February, you know, does it really beat out the guy who came in November 2010? No, it doesn't. We don't care. But they have a very established team, and I'm happy to see that they continue supporting StarCraft 2 in many different ways, even supporting with some tournaments, but also continuing to pick up old names like GuMiho, who has been on Psystorm for years at this point. He was on it before he went to the military, and here he is again, repping their logo. And Psystorm has even gotten a bit lucky as far as the timing of their pickups. GuMiho was one of them. He got picked up, and then probably, I think, like a year later, I want to say, won GSL. So that's pretty cool. And we do have different build orders, so let's get into that a bit quicker than last game, shall we? Oh, awkward supply block because the Reaper harassment. So we have 4 Reapers, 6 Reapers going to be on the way. So GuMiho did go for a reactor first, I guess. Yeah. So not 5 Reaper, 3 Hellion quite yet. 6 Reaper, 3 Hellion is what we're going to have. So just 1 more Reaper, 1 more grenade can make a big difference. But I think it also might push back the timing of this build ever so slightly. Does it matter, though? ZombieGrub, stop talking about the timings. We got actually like a lot of action underway. Game-defining action potentially, too. With more Reapers and Hellions on the way, that Cyclone is no longer the big, bad, standalone defense that it usually is. Although GuMiho chose to actually keep his Reapers at home. He did not instantly rally those units. Which maybe doesn't matter. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe the extra 5 seconds here would not have made a difference. But I'm a little surprised that he didn't rally them. Because at the very least, you realize, oh, okay, I'm not going to break this guy on the front lines. You still have the Reapers on the front that can then backstab as soon as they see the move out. What GuMiho's done now by keeping the Reapers at home, then checking the Xel'Nagas, has allowed Byun to say, oh, okay, I guess I don't have to worry anymore. And he actually even gets to send a Banshee out unscouted so far, but about to change. GuMiho taking the Xel'Naga, I think, is... I mean, I pointed it out to be a little bit of a surprising maneuver. I think Byun also might be a little surprised. Probably was expecting to find some of the Reapers there, but not an entire army in a Xel'Naga. And a medevac, rather. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. All right, 2 Cyclones do get a lock on, but thanks to that high ground vision, or the lack thereof, the Medevac will live. Byun now knows the intent of GuMiho's build and will get a little more defensively minded. He does have his Banshee that's going to go across the map, but no cloak. Not a whole lot of firepower. Enough to be a big distraction, I'll say that much. And GuMiho once again chooses to just pull back. I am still surprised by this. I mean, there's 2 options, right? GuMiho attacks or he pulls back, I suppose. And let's say that he's pulling back, even though his little Reaper Hellion hit squad's on the front lines. And pulling back might make sense if he doesn't really know what Byun's doing. I guess he doesn't technically know everything that Byun's doing. He saw the Banshee, yes, but there could have been a Medevac follow-up. There could have been a Liberator follow-up. There could have been a second Banshee and Cloak. Right? So he pulls back the anti-Banshee units, kind of probably most worried about the threat of a cloaked Banshee build. And that kind of reduces his Medevac to... I don't know, you know, the Medevac can be scary on the offense. You know it's back at home. That's you know, something to ease Byun's mind. He's like, this Banshee's not doing direct damage, but it is doing a lot of indirect damage. And the Medevac just feels a bit more useless. I mean, yeah, it's trying its best to help chase down this stupid little Banshee. It must be so annoying for GuMiho at this point, but it's not its real purpose being made so fast in a game, in a TvT. Its real purpose is usually to be on the harassing front. So this Banshee, like I said, direct damage maybe isn't that impressive, although 5 SCVs is pretty good for a cloakless Banshee, especially in TvT. It did a lot of indirects. I feel like that alone made GuMiho play so much more defensive, so much more hesitant to actually backstab or harass or actually have map control. Because these Reapers and Hellions, they're not good map controllers anymore. At best, they're backstabs. Don't want to put too much on this, though. Make it sound like the whole game is determined by the fact that GuMiho pulled back. Again, a bit understandable if he thought it might be 2 Banshees and Cloak. But it nonetheless has affected his game. There's really an alternative game here where that Banshee is, instead of faster Raven, I suppose, a 3rd Raven. And GuMiho has been backstabbing with the Reapers, harassing on the front lines of the Cyclones, dropping in the main base as long as there weren't Vikings to tear him down, you know. And instead, Byun has been able to have a little bit more of a chill time. Know that he got damage. He might even have an SCV lead. We know that he does. And it is about 5 SCV lead. And now he just has to track the next part of the game, the next part of TvT, which is that Marine tank push out. But all the parts behind it, all the parts before the Marine tank push from GuMiho, kind of easier for Byun to deal with. Which hopefully makes this hold here easier to deal with as well. He's got a little bit more to work with. He is, again, those barracks timings, right? Actually important. He's faster to the additional barracks. He almost had a sensor ready to go, but he might not need it anyways. He reacts pretty quickly. Even though his tanks were unsieged, they siege ASAP, and the Ravens do throw on auto turrets. But however, GuMiho's tanks actually still alive. That is a big problem. The SCV's pulled into us, but the Vikings of GuMiho will land. And it looks like Byun being out of position, unknowing of where GuMiho's army was actually going, might get him a loss here. It ends up being awfully close as far as the army on the front lines, right? 2 tanks, 3 Vikings, 1 tank, 1 Viking. But 19 SCVs went down. Byun now down about 12, has Medevacs trying to clean everything up, loses both Medevacs by the looks of things. Yeah, won't lose the tank at the very least, but 20 SCVs at the end of the fight. That is a bad loss. Byun was so close to actually having a center tower up. If that's 5 seconds faster, his tanks are at least sieged. And if it, you know, and on top of that, he might have also pulled the army that was over here, like a couple of Cyclones and whatnot, faster over to the left side to contribute to the fight. I thought it might still be okay because he did react about as fast as you would hope a pro gamer reacts, but if he had actually been sieged, that is a much bigger difference. So that does suck for Byun. He almost had his ducks in a row. He'd almost truly gained a lead. from the earlier talk about the Banshees, but now he has lost that lead. GuMiho now feeling in complete control, knowing that he kind of reset the army count, knows that Byun's on the back foot because of it, knows that he's got an economic lead. GuMiho is going to take a 4th base on location. He's been pretty bold this entire series with that, to be fair, but I think it's always been the right call. He's always known the situation. So again, basically what can tell you to place a command center on location as a Terran is how much control you think you have in the game. So if I killed the army recently, well, maybe I'll get away with this command center. If I contained the army recently, then maybe his army's still back at home. The only time it gets tricky is when you don't know where your opponent's army is, how big the army is, or how many medevacs are available. So if you know there's 0 because you're still on the Raven portion of the game, then yeah, you don't have to worry about being backstabbed or dropped or anything like that. If you've lost count, if you don't know what the build is, you don't know what the situation is, and there's actually 6 medevacs available, well, maybe you should be careful. At this point, though, GuMiho, 4th base, planetary, making a lot of sense. This 5th base, I would 100% say is just him being bold. Just him being a little, perhaps too courageous. This is, feels like one of those things where you're trying to be a bad boy, but quick enough that it's not noticed, right? The quicker you steal the cookie from the cookie jar, the less likely your mom is to notice type of situation. And I feel like GuMiho is actually snatching that cookie right from underneath Byun. 5th base to planetary before Byun even realizes it's there is big. Because then he has to decide, okay, where do I actually dedicate to the attack that can kill a planetary, left or right? As opposed to just, okay, I'll dedicate my tanks to the left, kill this planetary, and I drop to the right, kill a forming command center. A very big difference. But speaking of 4th base command centers, Byun's not even on his quite yet, and he might have too much trouble even trying to get it. His tanks were not in position. They were trying to track the army, but perhaps very inaccurately. They were all actually very close to being marooned by themselves. GuMiho's almost cutting them off. It looks like GuMiho not going to be able to enter into Byun's natural, at least yet. Also, GuMiho deflecting Byun's attempt to run through the middle of the map. So far, reading TvTs about as well as possible. Again, Byun just lost track of it a little bit with his tank positioning. GuMiho, though, now trying to pair up his 2 armies. Got the medevacs barely able to get away, unload everything as well, and had a bit of a trap waiting as well. 2 tanks sieged up, waiting for Byun to eagerly chase down those medevacs. They both are dangerously close to maxing out. And they both are getting 3/3 weapons at the very least. Byun not quite able to afford +3 armor. Hopefully remembers it. He's actually chosen to make an orbital. That could be a big mistake in the future, but right now it's about the engagements in the middle of the map. Byun trying to, I guess, initiate first, but GuMiho quick to respond, sets up the siege line, and that is one tough line to break. Yeah, Byun's still not getting that +3 armor, simply falling behind there. Still trying to find an opening, gets one of those tanks, finds a couple of Vikings, but now he realizes that GuMiho's Marine army, vast it is, it's very vast, that is a lot of Marines, is a serious threat to his home base, and he has to chase it. He basically has to chase it, but 2,000 atmosphere is working against Byun at this point. He realized a bit too late, actually. Oh no, it didn't start breaking on the rocks until way too late, and now he won't even do it. He realizes that a base trade is the only option, but he is later to the base trade, and also his tanks are not in position, unlike GuMiho's, who was basically expecting this. He figured if he used all of his Marines in such a fashion and they successfully got out of Byun's line of sight that he would be base trade, and he was right about that. Just leaves the tanks at home. Beautiful play there from GuMiho, really understanding how, I guess, Byun was going to work that out, as well as just understanding TvT in general. So Byun does fall in the Open Cup, I think just last week it was. GuMiho will move on, but a fun TvT nonetheless. I think both of these guys, very fun Terrans to watch for pretty much the same reason. They have some fun builds. They're willing to play a little bit more out of the ordinary, maybe a little bit riskier than some other Terrans out there. Well, especially the European Terrans. The stereotype does still exist between the two regions, I guess. Koreans known for aggressive, perhaps risky styles. Europeans opposite, but yeah, nonetheless, I think that both of these guys are even more so. They're crafty, they're tricky, they're kind of micro-oriented a lot of the time. Byun more so in the highlight reel than GuMiho, but still Yet they still showed us very solid TvTs, whether it was the Medevac opener or a typical Raven opener, into some pretty solid mid and late game Terran versus Terran action. So happy to cast this one. I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. As always, feel free to subscribe to this YouTube, my casting YouTube, where I have daily uploads of StarCraft 2 professional matches. So cheers to everyone who's following. Again, hope you enjoyed Terran versus Terran. Let me know who you want to see in the future, and I'll see you guys later for more StarCraft 2.